everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. Today, what we're going to do is work on a new stitch. And today's stitch is going to be the Linked Double Crochet Stitch. Now, some of you may have seen the Linked Single Crochet Stitch where we created a dishcloth. Well, this one is the Linked Double Crochet Stitch. And it's just a little bit of a taller stitch, but it creates this really pretty, very subtle texture with the links. I call these the linked bars going across the work, and that's what links your stitches one to each other. And this is great for garments, especially because if you like to create stitches that are denser and closer together, this is the perfect stitch for you. So let's get started. Okay, so what I'm using for today's tutorial is just some leftover yarn I had from a previous project. In case you're wondering, it is Bernat Premium yarn, and the color is Pink Lemonade. Oh, Pink Lemonade Sparkle. So yeah, you'll notice it's got this pretty little sparkle running through it. You can see I'm right at the end of the skein. So I thought it would be perfect time to work on a new stitch. So that's the yarn I'm going to be using, and the hook size I'm going to be using is a 5.5 millimeter hook, also known as an I or a size 9. And as always, make sure that you always have a handy darning needle and a pair of scissors on hand when you're doing bigger projects so that you can sew in your ends. This is just going to be a sample today, so I'm not going to be too worried about it. So let's get started. So for the linked double crochet, we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook. And there's no multiple count for this. So I'm just going to do this in a swatch using 10 stitches. So I'm going to start off by chaining 10. Okay, so there's my 10 stitches. Now, I'm going to start off doing the very first stitch probably differently than you will see any other tutorial doing this linked stitch. And I have experimented with this, and I found that for me, this felt the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1 and into the second chain from the hook. Remember, you never count the loop that's on your chain. I'm going to insert a single crochet. Just like that. Okay. And so when you have a single crochet, you'll notice that the loop on the top creates your actual top of your stitch. And then you've got this loop here that we call a leg. What you're going to do is you're going to take your hook and you're going to insert it inside that leg there. Like that. And you're going to pull up a loop so that now you have 2 loops on the hook. Okay. Then you'll yarn over and pull through both of those. So what we've done is we've created the height of a double crochet stitch, and we've given it a little bit of girth. Now, some people, what they would do is just do their typical chain 3, and then they would start the linked action going down. Now, the thing I don't like about that is it makes it very difficult to join your work when you're working in the round. And I'll also use an example with that coming up shortly. Okay, so this is what I call a solitary double crochet, or some people call this the standing double crochet. And many people use this instead of a chain 3 just to give it a little bit more girth. So now we're going to begin our actual linked double crochet. So as the name suggests, we're going to link these together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back down here and find these loops down here. I'm actually going to go into this leg here and that leg there. So that was down from that first single crochet we did close to the chain. And then I'm going to pull up a loop through those 2, just like that. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the very next stitch, insert my hook again, and pull up another loop. So now I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through those first 2 loops only, just like a regular double crochet. And then I'll yarn over and pull through 2. So what you're going to see is that loop from the previous stitch has been brought over. So it's linked the first stitch to the second stitch. Now, I must admit, it's probably very hard to see what's going on here. So I'm going to work a few more stitches because it does take a few stitches before you get kind of the feel of this. So now, before I go into the next stitch, I always want to link into the loop, the cross loop of the previous stitch. So see how this has been linked from here to here? We're going to insert into that. So instead of yarning over and going into the next stitch, we're going to insert into that crossbar there, just like that. And then we're going to pull a loop up from there. Okay, 2 loops are on your hook. Now I'm going to go into the next stitch below and pull up another loop. So 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2. Okay, so hopefully now you can start to see this little bar here. They're all linking the stitches together, and you can see it's really creating a much tight knit, so to speak, fabric. Okay, I'm going to do a few more. So again, I find that center bar that's going across, and I insert through there. So you see your hook is going down. Pull through. Now find your next chain, insert your hook, and pull through. Then you're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the last 2. Okay, so you'll always see this crossbar kind of jumping from stitch to stitch, and that is what links the stitches together. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish that all the way to the end, and you'll go right into the very last stitch, and I'll meet up with you at the end, and we'll talk about how you will chain up and turn your work. Okay, so again, don't forget that you always find that crossbar here. You insert first into there to pull up a loop, and then you go into the next stitch to pull up your next loop. Okay, and then you resolve it like a normal double crochet. Okay, so go ahead and finish your row 1, and I will meet back up with you shortly. Okay, and I'm just finishing my very last stitch. And your row should now look like this. Okay, so now you should be able to see the link bar, I call it, runs nicely across your work. And you can see how your stitches are snuggled very nicely together. This is a great stitch for garments, by the way. And you will see this stitch used in a future tutorial, so stay tuned for that. But it's really nice. That's a nice part of it because it does allow the fabric to sit nice and close together. So that is your work there. Now, in order to work into the next row, what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. So again, this is my way of doing it. Again, most people would do the chain 3 and then loop through all the chains. Okay. So actually, I'll show you the method that a lot of people would use with the chain 3. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. Okay, so then from here, what you're going to do is you're going to go into that second chain from your hook. You're going to insert and pull up a loop. Okay, and then you're going to insert into the next chain and pull up a loop. Okay. And then you're going to insert into the next stitch and pull up a loop. Okay, so now you've got 4 loops on the hook. You're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, then yarn over and pull through the next 2, and then pull through the final 2. So that is the way that most people would do that very first stitch. Okay. And that works just fine. I'm just not a fan of using it when I'm working in the round. So that's why I don't use this method myself. And I'm not sure if you can see that clearly. But if you're working in flat projects, absolutely, there's nothing wrong with it at all. But I prefer to use my single crochet method. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. So I would just chain 1, turn my work, And right away I'm going to insert into the very first stitch a single crochet, and then go back into that leg there, pull up another loop, and pull through 2. So it just gives me a little bit of thickness here, which I really like. Then I go in and I pick up both of these bars here just to make sure that it's one stitch connected. Pull through there, and now I'll go into my next stitch as usual, pull up a loop, and resolve the double crochet. Okay, so, and this eventually will square itself off, so don't worry if it's kind of leaning in a little bit. Okay, and now I just work the row as I normally would, inserting through there and inserting through the next one. And once you get into the groove of doing this linked double crochet, it really does become like second nature. Now, those of you that have followed me along for a little while, you may have seen the tutorial we did on the linked single crochet and a few of the projects we can do with that stitch too. So I'll leave a link for that in the description box down below as well. So go ahead and finish round 2, and I'll take you up through one more round. Sorry, row. I keep saying round. So go ahead and finish row 2, and I'll take you up through one more row, and then we'll talk about how you would join this if you were working in the round. Okay, and now I'm coming up to my last stitch of the second round, and this is what I just wanted to kind of make you guys just be aware of, is that those 2 little loops there, that is your last stitch, because remember that was the first stitch we created. So you are going to insert through that bar as usual, and then you want to insert into that full stitch on the bottom. And that's what will help kind of straighten out your edge there if you're ever worried. Okay, so then you chain 1 and turn your work again. So there you have it. Okay, and then we do the same thing, go back into that very first stitch, create a single crochet, and I like to kind of keep it a little bit relaxed. That way I can go back into that leg, pull up a loop. See what that does is it creates the height that you need, and you've got that nice stitch action happening there. So now I'm going to insert, I'm going to go through that leg and through this leg. So it kind of created a double layer there. And so I just want to catch them both. And then I'm going to go into the very next stitch and finish that linked crochet. Okay, and then you're off to the races for row 3. And at the end of row 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to join your sides if this were a project we were doing in the round. Okay, so there's my last stitch of row 3. Okay, so now your work is looking something like this. And I know you're probably thinking, ew, that jutting in and out, but it does even out. Once you build up your work more, this evens itself out. Now, if I were working in the round, whether you're working in something in the circular round, like a granny square, for example, or you're working on something like a hat, so you would come around here to link it up, right? So this is the part that gets tricky because you still want to maintain the integrity of the stitch. So at this point, when I'm doing a slip stitch to join, I've seen it where they'll still link, they'll still kind of hook through here, and then they will go through the top of the next stitch like that. And then they'll just slip stitch through the whole thing. But I find that it just looks, it's all bunched up and crossed over. So I'm not a fan of that, especially if you're doing something like a granny square. Here it actually doesn't look too bad, but when you're doing things like a granny square, or you'll see in the project that we did using this stitch, it just really was creating just a big old bunch. So once you come to here, I just like to simply slip stitch into the top of that stitch, the next stitch, and just call it a day. So once you slip stitch there, And these stitches sit next to each other anyway. Now this is a very small swatch here, so hopefully you can see that. So because they're sitting next to each other, they're going to look like they're automatically connected anyway. So I'm very happy with just doing a very basic slip stitch at the top of the stitch. And this is actually why I prefer to use that standing double crochet at the beginning, because it is a thicker stitch and you can get away with doing this. So hopefully you can see that there. Just going to snuggle it in a little bit more together. Okay, so that is how I would slip stitch to join around. Okay, so this is why mostly I will use, and I know I've said this already, I like repeating myself. This is why I'll use that standing single crochet. A lot of people don't like it when it does this little dip in. Most of the time when I'm doing flat projects, I am almost always doing a finishing border at the end. So that's why things like this don't bother me. But again, if you prefer the chain 3 method, you can certainly do that. And I will do that one more time right here. Okay, so you can go 1, 2, and 3. Turn your work. And actually, before I turn my work, I like to kind of have my V's facing this way. So into the second chain, I will pull up a loop, and into the third chain, I'll pull up a loop. Okay, then I'll turn my work, and from here, I'm going to skip this first stitch, and I'm going to go into the next one, and I'll pull up loops. So 4 loops on the hook. I'll pull through the first 2. Okay, I'll pull through the next 2, and then I'll pull through the final 2. So that gives you it does give you a much straighter edge there, okay? And then when I begin the links from here, I start from this bottom one here. So I insert, pull up a loop, go into the very next stitch, and pull up a loop. And I work my linked double crochet as usual. So you can see it does create a much straighter edge there. So the option is yours, but you see no matter what, see that? There's still a little bit of a bump there. So there you have it, guys. That's the linked double crochet stitch. And I think you'll find it very interesting for working on things like garments or blankets. Actually, I worked this stitch in a blanket pattern. And I just love the fabric that it creates, and it's the same on the back as it is on the front. You can work this in granny squares, which is nice as well, or any project at all. So if you have any further questions about this stitch, please do feel free to leave me a comment in the comment box down below, or email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. I'm always very happy to answer your questions. And if you have any requests of projects that you might like me to make with this stitch, also pop me a line and let me know. I'm very happy to take requests. And if you like this stitch tutorial, make sure you press that like button, give me a thumbs up, and that way I'll know to keep making more tutorials like these. In the meantime, guys, have an amazing day. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Take care.